Italy is grappling with a severe flooding after days of relentless rain, particularly affected with the northern regions of the country. Torrential downpour have caused rivers to swell, burst their banks and inundate towns and villages. This latest episode of flooding has left authorities struggling to cope with the growing crisis, with thousands of people evacuated from their homes. The region of Emilia-Romagna, Lombardy and Veneto have been among the hardest hit. In Emilia-Romagna, widespread damage to infrastructure have been reported, with the roads submerged, bridges washed away and homes flooded. Several rivers, including the Po, the Angel, have reached critical levels, forcing emergency service to respond rapidly to prevent further damage. The situation has been compounded by landslides in hilly areas, blocked roads and isolated communities. In Venice, the city is too familiar to high water levels. Flood definitions that put the test. The iconic Most Barriers, designed to protect the city with the rising tides, were activated shelters to mitigate the Venice from the significant damage. However, other areas in the region were not so fortunate. Many towns and villages in Veneto region saw extensive flooding, with the residents forced to fare the higher ground. Sicily Civil Protection Chief Fabio Cruiser warning about the increasingly unstable Mediterranean climate economy, warning from climatologists who said that the sea surface temperature, now about 27 Celsius, are contributed to the formation of more tropical cyclones now at the Mediterranean. Local media, including Roberto Lagola of Palermo and Etnico Tragico of Catania, have requested emergency funds of support from the national government. Cleanup efforts are ongoing, with more than 1,400 civil protection volunteers and firefighters involved in the cleanup debris and draining flooded areas. Environmental groups such as Ligibird and Colson Italy in the speed up infrastructure urged, especially in the southern cities prone on flooding. Experts from the University of the Palermo know that 16% of region drainage system and outdated or inundated from the today extreme weather conditions. As Italy begin in a powerful recovery, the message is clear. Climate disasters are no longer a distant possibility. They are not happening now, with the devastating consequences. Offering the lifeline in these terrifying times, agriculture sector and the backbone of Sicily economy is not immune to the storm impact. Orange in the field and inundated, posing to threat to crops of livelihood. Farmers, already facing challenges in recent years, are now too late to continue with the aftermath of this natural disaster. As the storm intensifies, rescue operations are underway to ensure the safety of residents trapped in the rising water. Emergency service blocked by the local volunteers to navigate in treacherous conditions to reach those in need. Evacuations are being carried out systemically, proportions to most vulnerable members of the community. Italy's government, in collaboration with the regional authority, is mobilizing rescue to address the crisis. Prime Minister Matteo Renzi has declared a state of emergency in Sicily, unlocking additional funds to rescue and in recovery efforts. The Italian Red Cross and other humanitarian organizations are also coordinated relief operations to provide essential supplies and support the affected communities. While the storm continues to batten to Sicily. The resilience and solidarity in the people shine through. Neighbors are leading to helping hand and communities are coming together to face and change in person to natural disaster. Sicily, Italy. The Italian island of Sicily have been hit by a severe storm accompanied by torrential rain, stuck to winds and flash floods, which have disrupted normal life and left widespread destruction in their wake. Authorities have declared a state of emergency in several provinces, and emergency services are struggling to cope with the flood of calls for help and support. The storm, which began on Sunday evening and lasted until Monday, was accompanied by wind gusts exceeded 100 km/h and total rainfall exceeded 120 mm in just few hours. In cities such as Palermo, Catania and Messina, road turned into rivers and mudslides in isolated rural communities. Dramatic footage posted on social media showed cars flooding through the flooded streets, flooded shops' windows and firefighters' residents wading chest deep in the water. In Palermo, civil defense workers rescued more than 17 people who were trapped in their homes and vehicles. "We have never seen anything like this," said Marco Ferraro, a resident of Catania. "It was like a tropical cyclone, trees were falling and wind was howling all night." The human toll of storm is still being aced. At least 3 deaths have been confirmed so far, including the elderly man who drowned in flooding basement in Messina and young delivery driver who was swept away by flood waters in Catania. Dozens of people have been injured, many of them due to falling debris and traffic incidents on the road, Middleside, Pullery or rain. Sicilian Governor Renata Citrelli visited the flooded areas on Tuesday, calling that the managed helicopters and promised long-term support. "We will not abandon our people. The recovery will be swift and complete," we promised during the press conference. Local volunteers are in the affected areas, diverted flood and helping to clear debris. Social media is now filled not only image and destructive but also of solidarity. Neighbors stretch offering shoulders and young groups organized donated drivers. Schools in several provinces remain closed to damage assessment continue. Psychologists have been sent to provide assistance to children and families affected by trauma, especially in the hardest hit community of Gela and Lixita. Sicily, normally bridge collapsed looks at the dew blow from the narrow fields and well green groups are now fast aswell through the mud and the water. Environmental warning: in addition to human casualties, entire ecosystem have been temporarily destroyed. In the city of Noto, residents placed candles and the steps of historic cathedral in memory of the victims. Local presses held open-air masses in a flooded courtyard, calling the strength and the unity. One of the Syrians, Lucia Manso, said, "We lost our beginnings, but not each other. The most important things." Meanwhile, the Italian army remained the standby with more than 400 soldiers destroyed across the isolated to clear debris, reinforce river banks to deliver aid to remove vigilantes. The EU has also experienced its support. A team from the US Civil Protection Mechanism has been sent to coordinate with the Italian authority, increasing the livelihood of international funding to support long-term recovery. Scientists emphasize this is only a high bridge of may become normal. Southern Europe is especially by the Mediterranean basin is becoming increasingly vulnerable to extreme weather events and the climate change accelerators. In Venice, a city all too familiar, and the high water level flood definitions were put on the test. The iconic moss barriers designed to protect the crisis from the rising test were activated sheltered the Venice from significant damage. However, other areas of the region were not so fortunate. Many towns and villages in the Veneto region saw extensive flooding with the residents forced to higher ground. The Italian government has declared a state of emergency in several regions, mobilizing rescue workers to deploy to area to assist in evacuation efforts. Civil protection authorities have urged people to affected areas to remain cautious to official warning as more rain forecast in the coming days. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni visited in the affected areas, expressing her solidarity with the victims and pledging government support to reconfusion efforts. This is national emergency and we are working closely to local authority to ensure the safety for all residents, she said. Climate experts that such extreme weather events could become more frequent due to climate change. Italy, with a varied geography, particularly vulnerable to affected changing weather patterns. The combination of heavy rainfall, poor mountain infrastructure and urban expansion into flood-prone areas has exacerbated the impact of recent storms. Public transportation was severely disrupted, leaving passengers stranded. The coastal area faced to burst with a storm and strong wave crashing against the coastline, caused erosions to damage the city Venice. Emergency services are working around the clock to help those in need. The Italian Red Cross has mobilized a team to support the most affected areas, offering shelters and distributing basic necessities. Refuse operations are ongoing, with the reports of people trapped in their homes due to rising water. Helicopters have been deployed to evacuate those to imminent danger. The impact of the storm on agriculture is also a growing concern. Sicily knows the serious growth of vineyard forces potential devastation. Initial estimates suggest significant crop losses with a could have the long-term economic impact of the region farming communities. Italian Prime Minister Conte has experienced solidarity with the affected residents, pledging government aid to resources to support recovery efforts. He praised the resilience of the Sicilian people and terrorist forced rescues. Meteorologists predict severe weather conditions will continue over the next 24 hours in advance residents to remain vigilant. As Sicily struggles with the aftermath and the disaster of focus to ensure the safety of the residents is beginning to arduous task to rebuilding. The full extent of the damage will become clear in the coming days, but for now Sicily is whispered the storm relentless onslaught. Coastal town in rural village in Sicily have experienced some of the worst damage. The agriculture sector, which is crucial in the island economy, have been hit hard, with the fields and cars destroyed in the rising waters. Landslides have cut off access of several mountains regions, complicating rescue efforts. The situation remains fluid, with the emergency crew working around the clock to respond to new incidents and then arise. Italy is grappling with a severe flooding after days of relentless rain, particularly affected with the northern region of the country. Torrential downpour have caused rivers to swell, burst their banks and inundate towns and villages. The latest episode of flooding have left authorities struggling to cope with the growing crisis, with the thousands of people evacuated from their homes. The region of Emilia-Romagna, Lombardy and Veneto have been among the hardest hit. In Emilia-Romagna, widespread damage to infrastructure have been reported, with the roads submerged, bridges washed away and homes flooded. Several rivers, including the Po and the Agrio, have reached critical levels, forcing emergency service to respond rapidly to prevent further damage. The situation have been compounded the landslides in hilly areas, blocked roads and insulated communities. After the storm, Sicily emergency service remained over limit. Over 315 emergency calls were recorded in 24 hours, and fire crews were sent to Cerrete, Ragusa, and Argento to clear fallen trees, restore power lines, and evacuate flooded buildings. Farmers in rural area report catastrophic losses. Vineyard, olive grapes, and retail and citrus orange, where other vital civil economy were flooded. This storm destroyed the 12-year war. St. Antonio Rizal, the farmer near Trapani, were in despair. The island's fragile infrastructure suffered serious damage. In the southern parts of the island, bridge in the rural roads collapsing, cutting off Smile Mountains town. In Enna, several landslides blocked all access roads, forcing helicopters to deliver supplies. Rescue teams, including the military, have been deployed to assist with the worst-hit areas. Civil defendants until have set up temporary shelters in schools and community centers of displaced families, many of whom have lost everything. Environmental experts warn that such intense storms are becoming more frequent due to climate change. This is not the first time Sicily was faced with the wrath of nature, but experts are calling this storm one of the most destructive weather events in decades. The last such disaster occurred in 2029, where deadly floods and landslides killed 37 people in Messina, but this time the combination of heavy rainfall, wind and widespread infrastructure damage made the consequences even more serious. According to preliminary government report, more than 1,200 homes were damaged, 14 roads remain closed, and 7 bridges have been structure damage. Insurance companies are already inundated with the claims of many families without insurance to continue on compensation from the state. This storm was particularly dangerous because of suddenness. Meteorologists issued a yellow alert just hours before the first downpour. By that time, it was too late many communities to prepare. Critics are now calling to fast weather warning system to better preparedness of natural disaster, especially in the southern region, which is often overlooking. Satellite images show in a grim picture. Several hospitals across the isolated reported temporary power outage, all to backup and generated to keep critical service running. Schools across the region were closed, and rain and air transport suffered several days. Meteorologists attribute the extreme weather conditions to low-pressure system knocked down the medicine, a rare Mediterranean storm similar to hurricane, which was intensified by hammering high sea temperatures. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni expressed his support, saying, "The government stands with the Sicily, where mobilizing emergency funds and civil protection until they provide immediate assistance." As the sky begins to clear, the true cost of the storm is only beginning to emerge. Preliminary estimates put the damage of tens of millions of euros. With the unstable weather forecast for the end of weeks, Sicilian authorities remain on a high alert. Residents are advised to follow the news, avoid flooded areas, to report any emergencies. Italy Protection Zone Civil Hotline. In the heart of the Mediterranean, the Italian island of Sicily has long been synonymous with the sun of the tempting coastline and seductive blend of the history and culture. However, this idyllic landscape is recently has been transformed in dramatic scene of nature fury. A formidable storm marked by resounding rain and fierce winds and lashed Sicily. and wetting the vulnerable of even the most picturesque square of the region with the terms of weather. The storm onslaught was achieved with the meteorologists barely able to predict and intensify before the unleashed food and made the apeon of fury. Within hours, streets in town across the Sicily were inundated, transforming urban center into unwelcoming, water-loaded mazes. The rain, increasing unforgiving, pointed the green portrait of the region undecided by the elements. In Palermo, the Sicilian capital, scenes and the chaos unfolded. As since streets and usually bursting with the life and aroma of Sicily, crashed while deserted save from assertion of vehicles struggling against the rising water. The iconic Tracemassimo, a testament of Sicily agriculture, dangerous stood with the silence within to unflooding calamity. Meanwhile, firefighters from all over Italy were sent to reinforce refuse force. Social media is flooded with the images and dramatic rescue operations. Children begin lifted from rooftops, elderly people begin to carry out throughout the waist deep water, and pain being saved from the daunting. The hashtag Sicilia Scotta Aqua were become popular throughout the country. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni expressed solidarity with the region, promising no community will be left without the help. We will rebuild our support every affected family. Experts warn that the Mediterranean region is becoming increasingly vulnerable to such storm. In the recent report by European Environmental Agency, Sicily was identified as a climate hotspot facing rising sea levels, heat waves, and now extreme rainfall. As the sky begins to clear, attention turned to recover. Damage assessment, no ongoing to questions are being raised about the urban planning, drainage system, and early warning protocols. But for many Sicilians, healing will take no longer. As a Gilera Manga, whose home was destroyed, it said with the tears here years. We survived but not lost everything. Now we have started all over again. As Sicily slowly begins to dry up, the real lesson of the storm is being recovered not only in losers but also in dialogue and the growing average in the Mediterranean Sea. One of the candle is calm sea is sunny skies is becoming of the epicenter of the climate disaster. Experts call this a turning point to the urge Southern European government is invest in the climate resilience. Coastal cities such as Palermo and Catania, densely populated, are reaching a culture heritage, particularly vulnerable to rising sea levels, increasing rainfall to heat waves. The Mediterranean Sea is warming 20% faster than the global average, said Dr. Elena Morandi, the climate researcher of University of Rome. This storm was not a flood. This is part of the trend we are seeing more intense, more frequent, more destructive. International observers from UNESCO have experienced concerns about Sicily's historical monuments, many of which were flooded or damaged during this storm. The Brockway treacherous of Noto and ancient Greek ruins, a Seleucid and new part of the parts surrounding Mount Etna were affected. In dramatic turn of events, Sicily finds itself endorsed in unprecedented storm as nature unleashed any pure upon the picturesque Italian island. We burst of the exclusive coverage and mythological spectacle deletion the impact of communities, infrastructure, and the environment. As the storm approached Sicily, among the clouds gathering healing the tempest to unparalleled proportions. Coastal area forced to onslaught the fierce winds and torrential rains, leading the widespread flooding in challenging conditions to both residents to emergency service. service. Our on-the-ground reported paint a vivid picture to havoc created by the storm. The city of Palermo was transformed into rivers and water levels served submerged cars and tested to resilience to fluidness. The historic architecture withstood the test time to the faces of relentless onslaught of the wind of rain. Throughout the island communities are grappling with the power outage, and the storm force caused significant damage to electrical infrastructure. Emergency shelters have been opened to provide refuge to those displaced by the storm. Sicily, Italy's largest island, has been hit one of the strongest storms in the recent times. One of the night of June 27, several weather warnings brought more than 180 mm of rainfall in just 20 hours, more than the region usually received in entire month. This was hit area where Palermo, Catania, Anginda, and Messina were the hardest hit. Authority confirmed that at least 3 people died as a result of the flooding electrocutions. Among the victims was a 45-year-old man from the town of Biancivaga, who was trapped in this car where sudden flood inundated in low light unprecedented. In Palermo, emergency service responded more than 14 calls in one night. More than 120 homes were reportedly flooded in historic districts of Calza and Bolero. In the town of Aguirre and Mount Etna, landslides to the evacuation more than 17 residents, while the rescue volunteers injured several persons. Power outage affected nearly 30,000 homes. An emergency company, Aeneas, sent dozens of repair crews on the island. Rain severe between Catania and Syracuse was suspended, and yet Falcon Belen Airport. 15 flights were delayed or diverted due to heavy rain, and a wind gust exceeded 19 km/h. The Italian government has declared a state of emergency in the several regions, mobilized rescue workers, and deployed to army to aid the evacuation force. Civil protection authorities have urged people in the affected areas to remain cautious to need official warning to forecast in coming days. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni visited in affected areas and presented their solidarity with the victims and pledged government support to reconstruction efforts. This is a national emergency, and we are working closely with the local authorities to ensure the safety of all residents, she said. Climate experts warn that such extreme weather events become more frequent due to climate change. Italy, with a varied geography, is particularly vulnerable in the affected changing weather patterns. The combination of heavy rainfall, property, maintained infrastructure, and urban explosion into flood-prone areas in exact path and the impact of the recent storms. Italy Environmental Minister has promised a new plan to rebuild the south, including flood protection and reforestation measures to improvement the early warning system, but critics say this measure alone overdue. In Palermo, the sun broke through the grey sky, eliminating the messy aftermath. In the night of Sicilian will not soon forget. We use a hardship, said Maria Conte, the grandmother, whose home was flooded, but we will drive flood, support each other, and move on. Sicily is beginning to recover, but questions remain. Will the storm the wake-up call is just another serious ignore of warnings?